We finally have an answer. In a battle of complementary colors, when it comes to red versus green, red clearly comes out on top, and green promptly soils itself, which is of course a pun, because he is a plant. Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam, and I believe that explaining the jokes only makes them funnier. But semi-seriously, this chapter continues our streak of One Piece-based insanity, with the trifecta of action, comedy, and gigantic world-shaking revelations. Also, I have a case, and within this case is a very special treasure. Because when this channel gets to 1 million subscribers, I am going to open this case and give whatever is inside to a subscriber. And we are getting super close to that 1 million number, so please do hit that tantalizing red button and let's discover our own personal One Piece. Also, here's a clue for what's inside. This makes me hungry. But also hungry is one Momonosuke, who has had to skip a meal in order to fight a tree. Yes, Green Bull is still here, and yes, he is still mildly annoying, but Momonosuke really shined during this section, because it's exactly what I thought. Momo stopped Yamato from helping because he needs to prove, probably more to himself than anything, but he needs to prove that Wano will be safe under his care. And it was such a fantastic step forward. I mean, it takes some pretty big stuff like an emperor or an admiral, but every time Momo comes into conflict with a major world figure, he levels up both physically and mentally. Just like crapping out clouds at the last second, Momo can now use one of the most powerful attacks in all of the One Piece, being Borrow Breath. So I guess the strategy with him is just pressure creates diamonds, which is very similar to Luffy. My favorite part of this was Momonosuke's speech, where we cut to a shot of Denjiro smiling. Because even though he was entrapped in nature's tentacles, he was just, yeah, you know what, that's some good stuff, Momo. Now kindly save me before this becomes some sort of eromanga. And if anyone out there was still hoping for Yamato to stay on Wano for reasons, I think that this is the final nail in the coffin of that idea. Yamato is definitely leaving, whether it's as a straw hat or not, you know, that still remains to be seen. But we are bringing this Emperor Spawn with us on our delightful boat trip. Something I was thinking about during the chapter though, and this happens every now and then, but we still have yet to figure out why Momonosuke's fruit was considered a failure by Vegapunk. Because I'm starting to think that it wasn't, or at least not in the way that we think. One Piece being One Piece, I could see a situation where Vegapunk perfectly replicated Kaido's fruit, at least in terms of abilities, but he considers it a failure because it turned out, gasp, pink instead of blue. And I would be very satisfied with that kind of gag answer. And something else I'm pretty happy with right now is the brief exploration of Green Bull's powers in the chapter, especially during his conflict against Raizo, and getting the obvious out of the way with the assumed weakness to fire. I love how Green Bull says something like, "You really thought such a stupid weakness would work against I, a Marine Admiral?" And I'm sure that in Raizo's head, he's just like, I don't know what a Marine Admiral is. I thought you were a tree. And what I really like is that so far, Green Bull seems to have a lot more personality than the other admirals, at least like extroverted outward personality. The 4 we've explored at the moment are all quite introspective types, but Green Bull here, he even puts on a bit of a skit and plays along with pretending to be hurt by Raizo's fire, like, which shows some fun personality of this loud and proud idiot. It also functioned like a great boy who cried wolf moment, setting up Momo's attack, which did seem to be genuinely effective. And I don't think this would have been as impactful of a moment without previously seeing Green Bull's reaction to a weaker fire attack. With that said, the vassals, they did get pretty decimated here. Honestly, even worse than they did against Kaido, or at the very least, quicker. Now, to be fair, this is a very tricky power to deal with, and many of the vassals did have a whole 20 years to prepare to fight Kaido specifically. But there was also an interesting idea posed that Kaido, for as brutal as he may have been, was actually acting as a twisted guardian of Wano. Not necessarily intentionally, but functionally, because his presence protected it from the rest of the world. Which is also a not so subtle narrative push for Momonosuke to do some Kaido type things. But my favorite line in the chapter is Green Bull admitting that he would not have come to Wano if Kaido was still there. I mean, because it's just like, you know what? I wouldn't be here if an emperor were also here, but an emperor is not, so I am. After which point, another emperor immediately shows up, and then Green Bull's like, whoa, looks like I'm in some trouble. And then he quickly exits through whatever hole in the ground sprouted his questionable existence to begin with. It's like he manifested his own misfortune. However, I did really like seeing his regeneration. Definitely the coolest Logia reformation thus far, with the whole sprouting sapling. It was so good. And speaking of art, there was also this one panel where the Wano landscape was on display, and you had the flower capital, the like crashed remains of Onigashima, and then in the middle there's a giant nature monster, and it looks like we were on the Dark Continent or something. Wano was a true hellscape. Moving to the king of diplomacy though, Shanks has managed to stop yet another high-profile conflict simply via the act of existing, and with a ton of callbacks to past One Piece events events as well. So firstly, Green Bull has pretty much the exact same reaction as Blackbeard did, by which I mean he instantly turned around, fled, and had a bit of a whinge. Like, I didn't want to fight you yet anyway. But also Shanks's words are a callback to Rayleigh's interaction with Kizaru pre-time skip, where he said, "Don't pick the buds before they sprout. Their era is only just beginning." And Shanks is actually perhaps unknowingly continuing this metaphor, because these figures, they have now sprouted and they're enacting the new era. Also, I do love the irony of referring to Luffy and Co as saplings, whereas Green Bull was literally a sapling in this chapter. What I'm very interested in is Conqueror's Haki, because this feels like the most potent use of that we've seen in the series so far. A very targeted attack against a world-class figure. Usually most people react to Conqueror's Haki in either stunned silence or just in fully unconscious, which is also a form of silence, I guess. I guess I'm trying to say that it's usually very quiet. But Green Bull, he had a very loud and violent reaction, as if it was actually hurting him physically or destroying him mentally. Especially because there was that funky impact bubble where you could see the Haki making contact with him. It was really interesting, and I'm keen to know if this was a character-specific reaction, or if Conqueror's Haki can just be used in this much more sinister way. As a side note, this moment is probably why we were introduced to the 3 rookie members of the Red Hair Pirates in 1054. I would bet, a medium size of currency, that Oda originally intended on showing them knocked out in this chapter, but it was cut for the sake of pacing. And in the end, it did a very One Piece kind of thing of telling rather than showing, with someone saying, "Hey boss dude, you just knocked out all of the rookie guys. Please don't do that." I mean, it still works, but I feel like I'm starting to pick up a lot more on Oda's original intentions and what eventually ends up being compressed. But also here, Shanks has a small flashback, and this is where the chapter might get a bit controversial, because it's only a silhouette, but it looks like Uta from Film Red is officially canon. This isn't the first time that this has happened. Around the time that Strong World came out, Golden Lion Shiki was name dropped in the manga, although to be fair, he also had an entire canon chapter 0 dedicated to his existence. I don't know how to feel about this honestly though, because it's starting to give me the impression that Oda structured this part of the story specifically to promote Film Red. If this movie wasn't coming out, I really do wonder if Shanks would have shown up at Wano at all, because it all seems very conveniently timed to say the least. I mean, I'm not complaining because what we got was pretty damn awesome. To be fair, Shanks has a very low bar for success. All the dude needs to do is breathe on screen and the world goes wild. But my more cynical side tells me that this is potentially a situation where marketing is being prioritized over storytelling. Back to Uta though, just because she's canon does not make Film Red canon. Uta can exist in the One Piece world, and this film can still be, for all intents and purposes, very well animated filler. Again, like Strong World, Shiki does exist in One Piece, but Strong World never happened. Putting the cynicism away now, this chapter concluded with a lovely little scene of Luffy and the rest of what I'm going to now call the Monster Quartet watching the fight. I thought this was really great because it's one of those moments where the Straw Hat shows such a degree of emotional maturity. Without any communication, they knew exactly what Momo and the vassals were trying to do, so they decided to let them. But they remained on standby just in case. And it's kind of vague, but at the end it's implied that Luffy recognized Shanks from that burst of Haki. And that does make some sense because theoretically he would have felt it before, way back when Shanks used it against the Lord of the Coast. So whether he fully comprehends it or not, I do think that Luffy got the general idea and had a bit of a sweet moment by distance. And at this point, we've only really spoken about half of the chapter because all of the massive revelations come to us in the form of the Robin Law section. And just as a note, I think it was a brilliant idea to leapfrog these two sections. You have one action-packed high-energy scene and another slow, introspective, informational scene. So high-octane versus high-mind-brain. And it was a nice way to break up the flow by splicing them. But the reason why this works best is because essentially they are both telling two parts of the same story. The story being that Momonosuke knows something that we don't. He knows that he will eventually have to open the borders of Wano one day, and his section is about making sure he's ready for that occasion. Meanwhile, Sukiyaki's section is all about giving us the context of Momo's decision in relation to the technicalities of Pluton, the history of Wano, and what it truly means to open the borders. And I loved learning about the history of Wano. Knowing how it came to be makes me appreciate the island so much more as a unique location. And when it comes to Robin, I think the term wet dream describes this part pretty well, because it is a sudden dreamlike discovery of hidden history, and it is very, very watersome. In addition to that, she also has Trafalgar D water lore tagging along, and is it just me, or are these two doing a bit of a flirt? Now, to be clear, I hate shipping. My philosophy here is that when it comes to shipping, just leave it to Amazon. But these two were pretty undeniably cute in this chapter, especially when Law popped up right next to Robin, and maybe, just maybe, this is Oda starting to do the shonen endgame pair-off. You know how a lot of shonen series just end with all of a sudden everyone gets together? Because just like the soil of Wano right now, there are a lot of seeds that we've planted. Luffy and Boa, Zoro and Hiyori, Sanji and Pudding, Chopper and, Mink girl? I think her name's Milky. But yeah, I could actually see Robin and Law being that end of series pairing. Right now, what I'm more interested in for some reason is Jack. Sukiyaki says that Kaido managed to discover the depths of Wano because he had a fishman on his crew, and that is true. But did we forget that Jack is also a devil fruit user? I mean, yeah, there's that whole thing about how Wano Sea is actually rainwater instead of actual seawater, but like, that doesn't matter. Devil fruit users have been shown bathing and losing their powers in regular water. Plus, Oda has also come out and confirmed that any type of water affects them. So that leaves us with two options. Either Jack did his deep dive before becoming a fruit user, or the much more fun option, whereby the Beast Pirates tied him up, plonked him into the water, and let him sink all the way down to the seafloor like a glorified scout anchor. Also, I don't want to get too logistical in my goofy pirate manga, but I don't quite believe that Robin and Sukiyaki made their way all the way down so quickly. The distance that they've covered is like twice the entire length of Wano, which is still a big country. So they've been walking for a long time. One answer we do now have is the location of our road poneglyph, one of the big Wano mysteries. And also an item that we can tick off our 2022 Bing card. So hooray for that. Although having said that, the road poneglyph was found in the most obvious place, which was a basement. Seriously, that's where all of the Wano road poneglyphs have been. We found one in the castle basement, then we found one in the Onigashima basement. So if someone was to say, hang on, there is also a third secret Wano basement, then yeah, that's the natural resting place for another poneglyph. And it was kind of anticlimactic when we did get it, because Robin's dialogue was just like, yeah, look, this is the third one of these that we've seen now, and it's nice and all, but I just want to see the fourth. Can you tell me where the fourth is, old doll man? But that is kind of that. With Green Bull's exit, our Wano problems are now very much zero. So over the next couple of chapters, I guess we've got some goodbyes to say, and then we will probably be on our way. Just like you could be on your way to this next video, which is also about One Piece, and I look forward to seeing you there.